So hey guys, today we're going to be talking about maxx. So maxx, what is the optimal way to play around this card? Well, if you think about all of the different things related to maxx, it gets pretty complicated. So we'll just take everything to its logical extreme. So with maxx, if you think about it, realistically, there's only a 20% chance at the moment, even when it was a 30% chance that your opponent would open maxx. Now, would this be a game ender? No. Well, there is, for the most part, no card at the moment where your opponent having that card would immediately be a game loss. Unless your opponent has a certain 5 cards, in which case they automatically win the duel. So in this case, if you have all 5 pieces of Exodia, you just automatically win the duel, and your opponent cannot do anything aside from draw if you have the 5 pieces of Exodia. And of course, to draw, your opponent and yourself would both have to hard open Exodia immediately. So astronomical odds. And that would technically be the best hand in Yu-Gi-Oh, you know? But with maxx, it's not going to be that extreme. So if we look and think about certain cards, so let's say we have cards like, let's say, um, Dragoon, Baron de Fleur, Apollosa. So these cards have something completely in common with each other, but not with maxx. And that's going to be the fact that you have the ability of choice. So with maxx, you do have technically the choice of when you activate maxx, right? And that's about all of the choice you have with maxx, whether you activate it or not. But then it's just going to be a floodgate effect. It's not any more interesting than if or when you flip skill drain. Like, do I want a skill drain here in the standby phase or whatever, right? But with these guys, all of the control is with me, pretty much, right? So with Dragoon, if I see, let's say, Branded Fusion, do I negate Branded Fusion? All up to me, right? But when you activate maxx, maxx actually does nothing. So this is just in general, right? So if I draw phase, activate maxx, nothing happens. Draw phase, or standby phase, end phase, no matter what phase I activate maxx in or what timing, technically maxx isn't going to necessarily do anything because all of the power with maxx actually lies in your opponent, right? So that'd be like if your opponent special summons or not. So if my opponent sets 5 passes, maxx is never going to get much mileage, assuming all of the back row is going to be stuff that's like removal, right? So no summoning is going to happen. Or if they do have a summon to do, you only get 1 draw, so it's an upstart. So it's not even that good because arguably, right now at least, even upstart kind of sucks just in general. Like, you will find 0 decks running upstart aside from ones that require spells in graveyard, right? Pretty much, right? So the reason for that, first off, is of course going first is super powerful. So you want to min-max on your non-engine as much as possible. The second thing being that, well, there's so many high quality cards at the moment, you're struggling to make room for them in your deck. So you don't really have a place for upstart at the moment because of, well, how powerful the cards are in comparison to how weak and low tempo upstart is, right? It's just more or less giving your opponent free life points at this point while still being a bad card. So, you know, like, why would I run upstart Goblin when I could run Nibiru, right? But yeah, with maxx, if your opponent's deck is simply not capable of special summoning at all, then there is no opportunity where you can draw off of maxx. Whereas with Baron de Fleur, your opponent's deck must do something, right? So with Baron and Dragoon, I'll be able to still negate my opponent's cards. And then we have the idea of Apollosa as well. So my opponent could activate whatever effects they wanted. It's my choice which cards I negate. Well, the one thing about like Appaloosa that it kind of has in common with Maxi, of course, is what if my opponent is not running any monsters? Or any monsters that activate in a way that Appaloosa can actually interact with them? Then Appaloosa becomes kind of cooked. So we have that concept as well, but Baron and Dragoon being Omni Negates pretty much interacts with everything. So that's pretty powerful in that way. And we also have Kaijus, which, you know, you can't Kaiju back row, so they only interact with monsters, and so on and so forth, right? So with Maxi, you could surmise that the most optimal way to play into Maxi is to completely avoid special summoning. Now, that leads you to ask a simple question. What deck is able to set up the best forms of interactions and the best kind of board without performing any sort of special summon? Well, there is a few options. There are a few. But the most notable one, of course, is going to be just stun. The best option you might have is, let's say, I normal summon a monster, and then I have some kind of floodgate accompanying it. So we'll say like skill drain, macro, there can be only one, rivalry, whatever, right? And you could even chain these together. So we have like skill drain, rivalry, Tikaboo all on the field at once. And then we have just like a 2.1k beater on the field. Pretty unbeatable, I suppose. So yeah, that's probably the best you can do. And if you think about it in terms of end board, it makes sense, right? So, well, even if you do a combo, right? Let's say we do, I don't know, let's say Malice combo. This just ends on however many interruptions. I believe Malice does not end on any floodgates. So then there's a limit to how many interactions you have with Malice. Whereas with Skill Drain, technically, no matter how many monster effects your opponent tries to activate on the field, it will negate them all. So you can argue that Skill Drain is actually infinite negates, being actually just stronger than Malice's end board in general. Unless, of course, your opponent is playing a back row heavy deck, in which case you don't really interact with that with skill drain. But yeah, that's just the thing here, where some cards just completely don't interact with some cards. It's pretty much like in Pokemon where you have a fighting type Pokemon and a ghost type Pokemon, and you're kind of just like awkwardly staring at each other. Or was it like normal and ghost? I believe normal and ghost you really can't do anything, right? I believe ghost type moves don't work on normal type Pokemon, and then normal types can't do anything to ghost. So yeah, bit of a staring contest here, but you have a bit more of an edge when you actually have monsters, because you well, kind of attack sometimes, I guess. Pretty awkward stuff, but yeah, that's the general idea here. So, I mean, it's not impossible by any means to play through Maxi like that, and the thing about doing it this way, where you're not special summoning at all, the other thing about this is that it's actually the most consistent way you can play around Maxi. Because if we were to just play a card that trades for Maxi, this is very good for going first, honestly. So if we have like Ash Blossom Joe Spring, we have like Called by the Grave type cards, Crossout Designator, whatever, right? If we activate any of these cards, this has insane mileage. So some people are saying like typically, oh, but you know, Maxi still at least traded for your opponent's Ash Blossom Joe Spring. And to that I say, bro, did you not see them just drop like 9 interruptions as their end board? Maxi would have at least given you a fighting chance if it resolved. But if it doesn't resolve, it's just worse. In that case, even if you played Imperm, sometimes, depending on like exactly what deck it is, like if you just trade out Maxi for a different hand trap, that hand trap is way more likely to resolve because there's less things that can trade for it, you know, like Ash Blossom Druid Spring, Called by the Grave. And then, you know, that other hand trap might have some impact depending on exactly what you're playing. Like Nibiru, for example, could have high impact, and it's like fairly generically playable, except for maybe like Kixtira and a few other decks. But yeah, you could do that, you know. But focusing back up here, back on topic. Yeah. If you're trading for maxx, that's a okay strategy, but you have to realize that even if we do play crossout with Ash Blossom Called By, then we're still 50-50ing on if we are allowing maxx to resolve, pretty much, right? Because with 5 cards in your deck that counter maxx, it's about a 50% chance to open a single one of them, right? Your opponent has a 20% chance to open maxx. So to this heavily invest in playing against maxx and trying to deal with maxx, but also still not making a consistent strategy for maxx is going to be a pretty bad strategy if you directly care about maxx. If you can't deal with maxx, then you'll just have to improve your odds, I guess. So with like Called by Ash Blossom and etc., right? You can use these cards to still you would lose to maxx sometimes, but that now it goes from like all the time to sometimes if you were running more of these cards. Well, it depends on the deck, of course, because there are also certain decks that can heavily play around maxx and still win the duel simply off of going first. So, for example, we have Special Summon Kixtira Unicorn, and then you chain maxx to oh wait, Red Fusion kind of has the same look as Theosis. Huh. Never really noticed how similar they kind of look if you zoom out enough. But anyways, Theosis chains maxx, boom, Unicorn, deck rip, and they still summon Fenrir, and then normal summon Riseheart, special summon a Riseheart. Then we have Big Bang technically banished, which would allow us to then special summon either Fenrir or Unicorn on the next turn as well, and then you're under macro, yada yada, right? So this gives you a Pot of Greed, but you're under macro, you got extra deck ripped, and your opponent has, well, 2 fairly powerful effects in their back pocket here, off of a 1-card combo. And then they have 4 unknown cards. Was maxx worth resolving there? Would that have been the game changer? Well, no. The better card here would have been just Infinite Impermanence on Unicorn, completely negating that 1 card. But of course, if your opponent has an additional card, an additional extender, like they already opened Theosis or whatever, then they have combos still. So the Imperm wouldn't have made that big of a difference there, but you wouldn't have been getting that many draws of maxx regardless. So it's not going to be that poppin' if you resolve maxx. If your opponent only wanted to upstart you, they could still end on like Unicorn Fenrir, which actually isn't entirely that bad considering they have 4 more cards in hand. Gotta remind you guys of that, I guess. And then we have just a bunch of other decks that just don't special summon that much. So we have like Draco Tail, which you would just perform the 1 fusion summon pretty much. And that's all you're really doing. So upstart, if you maxx, I guess. Then we have like Centurion, which has a lot of ideas to only special summon 1 time or 0 times, depending on how you do the combo. But yeah, and what you open, I guess. But yeah, maxx does have decks that can play into it without requiring Ash Blossom Druid Spring or Called by the Grave also. But the thing is, well, partially that a lot of these decks are not that popular, or people don't want to play them for XYZ reason. I don't know, maybe you just don't enjoy the deck's playstyle and you need to go insanely wombo combo. But yeah, not playing into maxx or playing a little bit into maxx are kind of viable. If your deck just completely doesn't play around maxx, then I mean that it is what it is, right? We've had this issue for like ages where there's going to be a card that's going to be very difficult for like whatever deck to play around. So this could be like Raigeki, Arcole, Maxi, Nibiru, Infinite Impermanence, Ash Blossom Joy of Spring. A lot of decks just have no way to play around certain cards, and I mean, part of it is so they have a weakness. Like, if we look at Magispector, this deck would be even more insanely frustrating to play against if you had no way to Ash this. Because, you know, you can't target any of their monsters, pretty much, period. And then you can't destroy them. So that reduces your options by a lot. And yeah, I mean, that's a little bit frustrating. And there are a few other archetypes. I can't remember all of them off the top of my head at the moment, but they're very hard to interact with for whatever reason. So they just combo through everything. So I guess like Malice Raziel kind of fit into that category. But yeah. That's all I got for you guys today. And hopefully this was helpful in some way. So yeah, that's all I got for you guys today, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.